Attention, everyone. I have a quick but important announcement to make. It's also top secret. Well, it's top secret in that Jimmy doesn't know. He doesn't know that I'm slipping this into the podcast. Next month, June 2022, is Jimmy's 40th birthday. His wife is planning a party, and we would love to give you the opportunity to be a part of celebrating Fofo's Big 4-0 by sending Jimmy an actual birthday card or a handwritten greeting. Like I said, he does not know that we're doing this, so it's important that you keep this on the down low. Don't tweet about it. Don't mention it to Jimmy. But if you appreciate the podcast, if you appreciate Jimmy, then we would love for you to send him a card or a note. Here's how you'll do it. Send the card or the note to me. Make sure the envelope is addressed to me. The card, of course, is for Jimmy. Send it to me, Joe Thorne, and the address that you can send it to is 1125 Oak Street in St. Charles, Illinois, 60174. You've got the whole month of May to do this, maybe even the first week of June, but after that, it's going to be too late. So if you want to participate, go get a card, write the note, send it in, and we will let you know how it goes after we surprise Jimmy. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support. Welcome to Doctrine and Devotion. It's a podcast that explores Christian faith and practice from a Reformed Baptist perspective. My name is Joe Thorne. I'm the lead pastor of Redeemer Fellowship in St. Charles, Illinois.
And I'm Jimmy Fowler, executive pastor at Redeemer Fellowship.
Man, we've had some good weather.
Great weather.
It's been hot out.
Oh, it's been nice.
Been sitting out on the back porch. I'm smoking my cigars.
Loving it.
Jen made me an old-fashioned with a little sprig of rosemary in there last night. Sitting on the back porch. Nice little breeze coming through.
Nice.
Feet kicked up.
Man,
Watching,
loving everything you're talking about
what
right
was I
now.
watching? I'm watching The Lincoln Lawyer. It's a new series on Amazon based on the book.
That book was awesome.
Yeah, you didn't read those books.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah,
You did.
I did.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's the main character's name?
How many years ago? What
I can tell you the main character of every book I've read.
Okay, well done.
That you can't means you haven't read it.
I have read it.
Okay.
I have read it.
Okay.
How dare you, sir?
I just think you're. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What's it about? What are the books about? Why do they call him the Lincoln Lawyer?
Because he gets driven around in the back, like he's in the back of the Lincoln. He's got a driver that takes him.
Why is he always in the Lincoln?
Because he's going from spot to spot.
He's busy. You
He's
don't
busy.
you don't like The Office.
That's right.
That's right.
And so he works in the back there.
You're right. And what kind of a car is it?
Lincoln.
No, wrong. It's a Ford Festiva.
Didn't they also have a movie with McConaughey?
Yeah.
Yeah. See. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And Edward Norton.
was he in that?
I think so.
Okay. All right. No. All right. Now you're gonna, I didn't watch it, so I wouldn't know.
I'm pretty sure Edward Norton was
Lincoln
Yeah.
Lawyer. All right, Lincoln Lawyer.
Yeah, I still remember that last scene. The last scene, it was awesome.
You're thinking of a different movie.
Am I really?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
I'm
Then.
pretty sure. All right, so
No, because he was walking out. He's like, "We were such a good team. I knew what you were trying to get out of me."
Really?
Is that not Edward Norton?
No, he's not in that.
Oh, who is it?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Who is it?
I don't know. I didn't see the movie, but ain't no Ed Norton in here. Wait, am I not? Yeah, Lincoln Lawyer right here. Yeah, I don't see any Ed Norton.
All right. Well, who's the other guy?
I see Matthew McConaughey, Ryan Philippe, William Macy, Bryan Cranston, Michael Pena.
Man. All right. My bad.
Yeah. See, you didn't even see the movie.
I did see the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Shay. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a good night. Good night last night. We're going to have an elders meeting here in a bit, and before that, we're going to eat some gizzards.
That's right.
That's right. It's going to be good. So we got an interview today. Another interview this time with Tommy Hicks. Tommy Hicks is a pastor and a theologian and a teacher, a professor. His real name is Tom Hicks, but he does prefer Tommy Hicks. So if you interact with him online, be sure to call him Hicks, Hickley, whatever you like. He likes that sort of a thing.
Okay.
He is the senior pastor at First Baptist Church of Clinton, Louisiana. He is an adjunct professor of systematic theology at IRBS Theological Seminary. Homeboy got his MDiv and his PhD degree at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not the PhD part, but he is the husband and father, and of course, he is a Reformed Baptist who does subscribe to the Second London Confession. He has
he has a lot of thoughts on stuff, good stuff. He's a smart guy. He writes great articles. He's really been touching on theonomy quite a bit over the past, I don't know how long, but I've noticed it over this past year. It talks about it quite a bit. And so I thought, well, why don't we bring him on and ask him to talk about theonomy? Like, what's the problem with theonomy? We're not fans of theonomy. We have our theological problems with it, but we wanted to bring somebody on to kind of talk through what the fundamental issues are that he has, and why it would be good to be wary of something that is growing in popularity.
Yeah.
So, man,
let's do it.
Check it out. Today I'm sitting down with Pastor Tom Hicks. If you are unfamiliar with Tom Hicks, he is the senior pastor of First Baptist Church of Clinton, Louisiana, and an adjunct professor of systematic theology at IRBS Theological Seminary. Am I right?
That's right.
So far, so good. You got your MDiv and your PhD from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Okay. Yeah. You are a husband and a father. You are a Reformed Baptist, meaning you actually do subscribe to the Second London Confession. You are a real Reformed Baptist, particular Baptist. Thanks for coming on, man. We've been wanting to get you on for a while, and we love you. We love your ministry, your work. Thanks for making time.
Oh, it's a pleasure, brother. We love y'all too.
Now, in the past, I've seen you very active on social media, on Twitter and whatnot. But then, like yesterday or something, I went on your Twitter feed. Is it on my end, or are your tweets gone? What happened?
Yeah, I delete about weekly, mainly because I'm not interested in the long running history of everything and a permanent catalog. I just want to engage from time to time.
No, that's good. That's smart.
Frankly, kind of backed away from Twitter from what I was doing probably a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I've just not found it as helpful. So
yeah, no, for sure. I get it. I actually don't enjoy Twitter. I sort of stay out of a sense of necessity, not even morbid curiosity, because I'm not. Too many hot takes that are tepid and unhelpful, and
that's right.
Just a lot. Anyway, but so you are still active on social media. That's good. I would encourage people to follow Tom. I thought before we get into the real reason that I called was maybe you could just tell us, something that God is doing in your life right now, or something that He is teaching you that you could share with us. Something that seems to be on the forefront of your mind and your heart right now.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about. Really some issues probably I hadn't thought as deeply about through seminary. And really it's related to the doctrine of God. I mean, I was taught a certain way in seminary that I have learned wasn't the historic position. I mean, in a way, the doctrine of God seemed easy to me in seminary. It seemed like all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed. It was a neat little package. And I wondered, I learned the doctrine that God is incomprehensible. But he seemed quite comprehensible in many ways to me. But historically, he is not comprehensible. And what the historic theologians of the church did was they certainly expressed and articulated the doctrine of God, but the deeper you went, though there weren't contradictions in the way they continued to express God, the more you're forced to see that your mind cannot wrap itself around him, even though you never reach a point at which it's irrational to contemplate him, which then leads to a sense, an experience of utter dependency and need and the sufficiency of God in all of his greatness. And so I have been really reflecting a lot on God, his nature, his essence, and seeing how also historically that led to piety.
Yes.
I mean, that in fact, one of the old Puritan devotional manuals, The Practice of Piety by Lewis Bailey,
right.
The whole first chapter is on the classical theism and expresses it in pretty complex terminology.
How dare you? That's first of all, that's a modern thing. Okay. Classical theism. That never existed before. It's like 20 years old. Okay. It's that modern. And you sound like one of those weirdos who says you can't know what God is, comprehensive. Yeah. It's just, maybe I'm called the wrong guy. I feel like you're too old school for the modern listener.
Maybe so.
No, man, I totally agree. It's really interesting. I'm talking to Richard Barcelos in an interview as well. We're going to be talking about Thomas Aquinas and some of that stuff because, crazy be crazy out there on the interwebs. And some people are asking legitimate questions and some people are processing, but there's also just a lot of crazy too. And I'm with you. Not only is that something that God has, continued to impress upon me, the theology proper, classical theism, the knowability and unknowability of God, everything from, impassibility to aseity, all that stuff. Really, really important. And by the way, guys, if you don't know, the Reformed Baptists are the ones that have really led the charge in the last 10 years writing about this stuff, while other denominations who historically were more on the ball are doing other things. So praise God for the Reformed Baptists that are getting it done. But, I would say even not that long ago, like I saw more confusion over like ecclesiology and things like that, or aspects of soteriology. But now, boy, this is the big thing that people are jumping into, and sometimes they need to wade in a little more carefully.
Right.
So yeah, that's good stuff, man. I appreciate it. Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Tom, is that you are, and this, I'm playing with words here, so I don't come at me, guys, but you're a man of conviction and conscience. And what I mean by that in a very subjective way is that you're not just a man of conviction where you're going to attempt to get things right in your mind and in your articulation, but you're also a man of conscience, meaning that you want to do things well. You want to do things right. You want to handle yourself right. And I've seen you do that. I've watched from a distance. I've watched you do that through your interactions and ministry engagements, that you are a man that I respect, who operates and lives his life according to biblical principles, by the grace of God, to the best of your ability. And I appreciate that about you. You're not one of those guys. You're not an angry theologian. You're not an arrogant man. You're a very knowledgeable, very brilliant man, but you're humble. Really appreciate that you are a man of conviction and conscience. So I praise God for you, brother.
So that's encouraging. Thank you for those kind words.
So, all right. One of the things that that I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I'm just going to say I get the impression that there are some things that annoy you. And one of the things that seems to annoy you from my outside perspective is something called theonomy. Does theonomy annoy you, brother?
Yeah, it does. I think that would be fair to say that it annoys you.
So, okay. So you've talked a lot about, you've written articles, you've taught, it's also along with, what we were just talking about, theology proper and whatnot. Theonomy is very active on social media, the doctrine of theonomy. So maybe a lot of our listeners are probably seeing some of that and seeing people debate. Maybe they've seen you go back and forth with some guys. Maybe you could just walk us into what theonomy is in simple terms and how it kind of works itself out.
Yeah, well, the word theonomy probably first started being used in the latter half of the 20th century. It was founded by R.J. Rushdoony and continued by his son-in-law, Gary North. And probably, though, the ablest defender of theonomy has been Greg Bahnsen. So those are some of the historical figures picked up today and modified. They're not, these newer guys aren't using, they're not lockstep with the old version of it, but they're definitely leaning on it heavily. And these would be people like Jeff Durbin, Joe Booth, to some degree, Doug Wilson is using these categories. But theonomy basically is this. It teaches that all civil governments are required to enforce Old Covenant judicial law in its essence, together with all the penalties of Old Covenant judicial law. And some would take exception to that. I mean, there are different expressions of it, but this is a generally accurate definition. But they would say that civil governments are not allowed to enforce any law that's not prescribed by Old Covenant judicial code. And then usually with theonomy, it doesn't have to be, but almost always there's a postmillennialism that goes with it, that says that God will realize this theonomic reign in a future millennial golden age by Christ's grace through the faithfulness of his church. Right. So as we are faithful to trust the Lord, keep his commandments, repent of our sins, live godly lives, and fight for these things, that God in us by grace will construct this this golden age, which some would say we're already in. It's like a sanctification process. They would say it. Some would say, well, it's already begun, but we're going to be sanctified into this future,
right,
very sanctified state as a society. And so that's basically
okay.
theonomy.
Well, I'm just curious, in your opinion, before we get into what might be wrong with this, you mentioned, you started talking about postmillennialism, and do you think postmillennialism tends to lead into theonomy, or do you think theonomy has led people into postmillennialism, or does it make
it doesn't have to. I mean, today it seems they seem to run together, but historically you had postmillennialists who in no way were theonomists.
Right.
You actually had, weirdly, I mean, there were premillennialists historically who had the flavor more of postmillennialism to us, because there was they believed in the spiritual return of Christ, and that the church, the mission would be more and more accomplished, more and more Christians, and then Christ would visibly, finally consummate his kingdom after that millennium. So no, I mean, Jonathan Edwards was a postmillennialist.
Yeah, not a theonomist.
Not a theonomist, and so absolutely, you do not have to become a theonomist to be a postmillennialist. That's for sure.
And here's the message for everybody today: you don't have to be a theonomist. Okay, everybody, relax. So,
that's right.
All right. So, I think a lot of people, they're going to hear what you just said. They're going to say, okay, so theonomy is, to some degree, the implementation of Old Testament judicial law into society. Like every society, every culture should be ruled through Old Testament judicial law, biblical law. I think a lot of people hear that and they go, right on. Yeah, why not? That sounds good to me. It'd be better than let's kill our babies in the womb. What's your problem, dude? Why are you so hung up on why do you not like God's law? Why do you love the world so much? What is wrong? What is the problem with this idea that all cultures should be implementing Old Covenant Judaic law, judicial law? I'm sorry. What's the problem with that maybe people don't see initially?
Yeah, well, first we shouldn't be killing babies in our mother's womb. I mean, that has nothing to do with theonomy.
Yes.
This is theonomy's central error, is that it doesn't recognize the Bible's own categories for law, and that not all of Israel's Old Covenant judicial code is essentially, in all of its aspects, moral.
Right.
So there's always some kind of moral underpinning of every law of God.
Sure.
Even if it's just the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me.
Right.
But it fails to distinguish between moral and natural law, which is rooted in God's own essence, his own character, his own holiness, which cannot change, on the one hand, with positive law or laws that God posits by divine fiat for a reason. And then so connected with that error is a failure to see that Israel, the nation of Israel, was a typological kingdom that was a type, a shadow of the redemptive work of Jesus and of the redemptive kingdom of Christ, but is not itself the redemptive kingdom of Christ. And so you're going to get very confused if you're trying to look at Israel and see that should just be transposed, or all the laws given to Israel should just be dropped down upon a nation today. It denies Israel's unique and holy status as a typological kingdom, or a typological administration of the kingdom of Christ. And so the fundamental error is one of law. Certainly there is transcendent moral law that's revealed in nature, rooted in God's character, and one of that is do not murder. Course.
Yes.
So the 10 Commandments summarize this moral and natural law of God. And so society certainly is not free to murder or break any of the 10 Commandments. So the part of the problem you're saying, centrally, it's a law issue, and understanding the law. And you're saying that there are laws that are
so intrinsically tied to the character and the nature of God that they're always in effect. They never change. They're summarized in the Ten Commandments. Those other laws serve various purposes in the life of Israel as a typological kingdom or community. And so to try to bring those into the new covenant creates potential problems. So would you then say that those 10 commandments should be implemented in judicial law in every country and culture, or can theonomists just do that? Like how does that break down?
Yeah. So that's an excellent question. Well, first of all, say all men everywhere are under natural law, and God is going to enforce it, right? So God is the enforcer of all his moral law, even if he doesn't bring what would appear to be a temporal consequence. So he does bring temporal consequences, but even if he doesn't bring it until judgment day. So all men are accountable to the one true God for their sins. But is it the civil government's job to enforce every law and to bring a penalty for every breach of the Ten Commandments? Certainly not.
Yeah.
That can't be the case. In fact, I think a good guide for what the role of the civil government would be to see where God brought judgments upon nations in the Old Testament. So non-Israelite nations, what really brought him to destroy them.
Right.
And so governments need to be in line on those matters. And these would be things like, actually, it's an excessive pride. It's an excessive pride that then leads to the strong harming the weak. So abortion is a great example of that. So there's oppression, there's aggressive warfare against nations that then leads to oppression, this kind of a thing. And if you just even look up the word oppression in the scriptures, you'll find it everywhere. Oppress, oppressed, oppression, oppressing, which is, that abortion is a great example of that, harming the weak, those who are not guilty. And so murder, theft, any proud abuse of power. This is why God has brought his judgments upon the Gentile nations. It's pretty consistent too, if you look at it, and actually not for idolatry. Weirdly enough, there might be an instance here or there. I'm not sure that's perfectly consistent to say, but if you look in, it's Israel mainly that was brought to judgment for idolatry.
Do you believe that I see that as well. I totally see that. Do you think that the mission of the church, like the Missio Ecclesia, has relevance in this conversation? Like, what is the mission of the church? Does that factor into to discussion and debate in this issue of theonomy?
Yeah, I think it's actually central to the whole question. What is the church's mission, and is it to transform a culture or a society? And it's not. I mean, Matthew 28 speaks of the mission. There's debates about what that means, but it seems pretty clear to me that our job is to go and to make disciples from or out of all nations. So individual disciples out of every tribe and tongue, that the church would baptize them and teach them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, and teach them all that Christ has commanded within the context of the church. That's our mission, is to preach the gospel for the conversion of sinners, for the building up of churches, the sanctification of Christ's people. And, the church is almost like an ark in the middle of a stormy sea. I mean, we're not going to pacify the nations by our righteousness. We're not going to bring in the kingdom through our works, which is a great concern of mine, is that theonomy, though I think they would deny, I believe most of them would deny it formally, but the way it comes off is that through the church's faithful works of obedience, God graciously works with them and in them to bring about his kingdom, which is suspiciously similar to a covenant of works, to do this and live. Yeah. We're going to work to bring in a temporal paradise of a kind, or something more conformed socially to the kingdom that we'll see in heaven, the New Jerusalem.
It's also
that's not the church mission.
Yeah, it's also a redefinition of what the kingdom is when you start to lay it out that way. It's a different kingdom.
That's right. It's
So
not a matter of eating and drinking, but of righteousness
yes.
and holiness. Yeah.
So why do you think it's so appealing? It seems appealing to people. Why do you think people gravitate on a personal level? Like, and I don't mean like it's merely emotional, but like as human beings, right? The way we think and how we feel and what we experience. What do you think is so appealing about this to what seems to me to be a growing number of people?
I really think that what's appealing about it is that something is wrong with our society.
Yeah.
Something is badly wrong, and the sense that I can do something about it.
Yeah.
That what's really wrong is me, which that is part of what's wrong with it. But then on top of that, that if what's wrong is what the church is not doing correctly, which I'm not saying the church is doing everything correctly, but then if we fix what we're doing, we can fix our problems. And so I think that's what's appealing, which is actually very, very proud. Not that we shouldn't be doing what is right. We should be. But if you shift the locus of the problem to us, and that if we change what we're doing, then the problem will be fixed. That's a highly appealing thing, because then there's a solution to it in us, instead of that the answer is really in the Lord. And then we're to keep his commandments and trust him and walk in his way, no matter what the outcome. So I think the appeal is to the sinful nature, frankly. And I don't mean to give unnecessary offense by saying that, but I really do. I think it's appealing because we like to think we can rescue things ourselves.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I might balance it by saying, I think the desire to see righteousness reign is a good desire, right? And I know that they want to see that. They want to see God glorified, and so that's a good motive. I think there's confusion over how these things work themselves out, but I know that I know guys that are Theonomists are good guys, lovely men, they love the Lord, all of that, and the ones that I know aren't, rabid. Right. They're like reasonable dudes. I got one in my church. Wonderful man. Love him. One of the godliest men in our church. Yeah. No division, no rancor, nothing. He loves the church. So, anyways, so I know that a lot of it, can come from like the right heart. Right. And then of course, how we then implement that and work it out is a mixed bag. I know we're short on time. I want to ask you a couple of maybe quick questions here. Who should people read to get a grasp on theonomy? So like if you're going to say, hey, here's a primary source for an advocate for theonomy, who should they read? I recommend people who can do that sort of a thing. Read somebody who's pro-theonomic, and then a good critique. Can you give me a couple of suggestions? Yeah.
There's a bunch of books out there on theonomy that are old. The best advocate for theonomy, if you want to read the very best articulation of theonomy that avoids the pitfalls of some versions of it, is from anything by Greg Bonson. So he has a fat book titled Theonomy and Christian Ethics. That's his magnum opus on theonomy. But he has a shorter book that's really just a summary of the ideas in that larger one titled By This Standard, which I usually recommend people read. And that's also by Greg Bonson. So that would be on the pro-theonomy side. Contra theonomy, there's an older work titled Theonomy, A Reformed Critique, that's got a bunch of different essays in it, edited by William Barker and Robert Godfrey, which is good, very, very good. But if you want to kind of get down to the core issue of the threefold division of the law, which is what they're denying, they're collapsing all law into one. An excellent book is From the Finger of God by Philip Ross. And so I would commend that to distinguish the categories of moral law versus positive law. And I will just throw in one more that's got a good positive vision for political theology, because that's what really people are after. And he doesn't directly critique theonomy, but there's a tacit critique of theonomy, but also certain kinds of Kuyperianism, which is David Van Drunen's Politics After Christendom, which I would commend. He's a Presbyterian, I'm not, but I love him anyway. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah. I mean, listen, we Reformed Baptists love Presbyterians.
We do.
We love the best ones anyways.
That's right.
And hopefully they love the best of us. Now I'll just say, I have not read, Van Drunen. I have read From the Finger of God, and, I've been Reformed Baptist since like 95. And so I read a lot of the classic stuff, man. When that book came out, it's so good. Because I read the classics. I've been reading, Reformers, Puritans, and all these guys, but it does such a good job of I think settling this critique that is oftentimes saying like, oh, that's you're just arbitrarily throwing into these divisions of the law. I thought it was so helpful. It's big, so it's hard for a lot of people to get through, but it's so worth it. These are great recommendations. I'm really excited. I'm going to check out Van Drunen. I've been meaning to read that. Listen, if people want to interact with you, Tom, online, maybe they want to throw you a question or harass you. Maybe they want to say that that you don't love God's law or something like that. How can they interact with you? What's the best way for them to? I'm not going to give them your phone number, but not without a hefty fee. How can they interact with you on social media?
I mean, they could just interact directly with me on social media. I'm on Twitter at Tom Hicks. What is my Twitter handle? I don't even know what it is. You'll find me. You can find Tom Hicks 1689. Tom Hicks 1689.
Yeah, Tom Hicks 1689. And I'll link to all that in the show notes. So you're welcoming people if they have questions and they want to engage. They can hit you up on the Twitter.
100%. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Anything coming up? Got any books coming out or any articles we can look forward to coming up?
I don't think so. I'm working and preparing different courses. I am an adjunct professor for IRBS. I'm also a professor for Covenant Baptist Theological Seminary.
Cool.
And I'm also teaching some courses overseas, and so I'm really mostly working on preparing courses to teach.
That's great. That's great. Well, those are great seminaries. You guys should check those out. We're going to link to all this in the show notes, guys, so check it out after Jimmy and I come back on to wrap things up. Tom, thank you so much for spending time with me. Love you, appreciate you, man, and look forward to talking again.
A blessing, brother. God bless. Love you too.
I like that guy.
Yeah, and I figured out I was wrong. I'm thinking of the Richard Gere movie.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah,
with Primal Fear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
My bad.
So I know movies, bro.
My bad. But I've read Lincoln Lawyer.
Yeah.
But continue.
Oh yeah. Based on what you just showed me, I don't believe you.
Anyways,
you probably think you read Lincoln.
Anyways,
you probably read a book on how to build Lincoln logs into a for a Lego playset or something.
Anyways, but that was a good interview.
Yeah, man, he's good. He's solid. And we'd like to have him on. Hey, listen, guys, we want to do more interviews, so let us know who you would like us to talk with on social media. Jimmy, how do they let us know who they would like us to talk to?
Well, on Instagram and Twitter @DocandDevo, or on Facebook /Doctrine and Devotion. You can also head to the website, doctrineanddevotion.com. There you can contact us. You can sign up for the email blast or hit the store, joefostore.com, and grab some gear. We got that fresh part every Monday and Thursday. We got blog posts and video content over at the website. And we've got that all-access exclusive content. We got Banter Truth on Tuesdays, Weekday Wisdom Monday through Friday. Head on over to doctrineanddevotion.com /all-access to sign up today. Later.